Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The People's Brief. One of the things we want to do with this show is put an end to some of these meaningless, unproductive, counterintuitive, and white supremacy-induced arguments that keep on holding us back from the finish line of freedom, the landmark of liberation, my God, today. And on today's docket, we have what it means to be Black. What, pray tell, makes kinfolk, and what's more, what makes them kinfolk you can count on? Hey, I feel like having a little bit of church in here tonight. Why? Because being Black is serious business. Hey, I'm sorry, let me be serious. But it feels holy. It feels like an otherworldly spiritual experience. All the ghosts of Negroes past compound into this very present experience, enriched with perseverance, ingenuity, and defiance. Can I get an amen? I said, can I get an amen? Amen. Right. It feels righteous. But sometimes that claim to fame makes us a little self-righteous in our proprietorship of said Blackness. Oh, proprietorship, that's a big word for Elmo. Let me make it clear. What I mean by that is, oftentimes when we exert our claim on Blackness, it looks like gatekeeping, as it should. It looks like extraditing or exiling people we believe don't even go here. People who proverbially can't even sit with us. But we are also very finicky about that. Quick to adopt people in an attempt to reclaim the one-drop rule, like the new Pope or Haley from Sinners, but quick to push away the half-Black AKA from Oakland that went to Howard because somebody, and a racist white at that, said she's not even Black. Now look at you. Stimulus checks long gone, hands out waiting on a $5,000 check you were absolutely never gonna get. But do you know why we oscillate back and forth so often on who's deserving of Black acceptance and who isn't? Because none of this shit is real. Yeah. Race has absolutely no scientific backing. Your DNA cannot identify you as Black. Race is just one of those things we're coming to know and learn as a social construct. White people made it up for the purposes of enslavement, and in doing so, created a plethora of conditions that result in very Black experiences. Ours just happens to be Black American. A pretty raggedy origin story, ain't it? But the good news, what that means for us is that we have the freedom to be as Black as we want to be, however we want to be, as long as we're not punching down on, hurting, or colonizing, Drake, any other Black people in the process. Yeah, if you anti-Black in the slightest, you're not one of us. You can be Blacker than Michael Blackson and still not be one of us. Being Black does not mean adhering to socially constructed confines determined by our collective trauma, i.e. Black people don't do this, Black people don't do that. And what I know for sure is that Blackness can do anything. It can transcend leaps and bounds beyond anybody's wildest imagination. So demanding to see a certain performance of Blackness because it's familiar to you, because it's what conveniently fits within the limits of your mind, well, hell, if you like it, I love it. All I'm saying is limiting Blackness holds us back. Yes, I am once again talking to those of you who just couldn't vote for a lady because in one very specific instance, you forgot how to process a multiracial background, but somehow we still got people out here hollering they want their baby to have good hair. Make it make sense to me. Blackness is not a monolith. And on today's episode, we'll explore the multifacetedness of Black identity with our guests, Kyle Santillian, Quentin Thrash, and Dr. Yaba Blay. Join us as we dig into the question, are you Black enough? Right here on The People's Brief. So Black culture is a huge umbrella term, and to really understand it, you've got to be in it. And to be in it is to recognize the importance of protecting it. And to discuss these ideas with me, I have someone who has been sitting at the table of our culture for years now, Kyle Santillian.
Hey, what's up? Oh, look at
that. Welcome to the studio.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. As someone who's been in this business for over 25 years, you've had kind of a firsthand view on people we have and have not, people who we currently do and do not let into the culture.
Facts.
I just want to chat to you about like what we think the stipulations for that is.
Yeah.
And a little bit later, we'll play a game. Game might get us in a little bit of trouble.
That's
I'm
okay.
Down.
We got to live on the edge, right?
Okay, I'm down if you're down.
I'm down.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
I feel like for a while now, maybe late 90s, early 2000s, Black culture was marketed to look like one particular thing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's like whatever lens or whatever aspect of the culture sells the most. I put it that way.
Okay.
It's the commercial aspect to it. I always felt like, especially with hip hop and you know that part of the culture, I felt like it was a lot more true to itself in the early 90s, the late 80s and things of that nature. But as it got more acceptable worldwide, nationwide, you know what I mean? Like people whether it be the media, I know we work in media, whatever the case may be, they would focus on the part of hip hop and R&B and that part of our culture that is as easily or more easily accessible to everyone.
Okay, and how do you think that has changed over time?
Honestly, I don't know that it's changed. I just think that that's still a factor today.
Okay.
And I think one thing that it has done is a lot of people don't have a wider range or a wider vision for what it is that we can do and what we do put out there from an artistic standpoint.
I don't know that I'll disagree with you because I feel like you're right. As far as hip hop culture goes, it still has a very distinct look. Everybody's kind of chasing after the same thing to present the same way, but I feel like these subsets of hip hop, maybe if it's neo soul or whatever, what have you, we have these artists that are coming out with their own looks and feels and vibes in ways that may not have been as prevalent before. And I'm specifically thinking of people like a Willow Smith. Like, she's black, very much in her aesthetic. The music may not give that if you hear it and you don't know who's singing, you know? Who else? FKA Twigs. I'm just trying to, can you think of anybody else that might not fit the mold?
You know what, I don't know, but to your point, what I think that says to me is that now we're in a time where the internet allows people to put out different things that are coming from different avenues now. Now, instead of that person trying to go through the traditional route of radio, TV, record labels, they can just make something that might seem a little bit different to somebody else and just put it out there online, alternative, so to speak. And now they can just put it out there and anybody could gravitate towards that feels that. So that's actually a good point or a good aspect of having the internet the way we do have it today.
Yeah. But you bring up a really good point. I feel like we are a blessed people that have the ability to connect with so many people in so many different ways, and our music is primarily that vehicle. But it also makes for a lot of inroads for people to either hop on the bandwagon or maybe even just for artists to develop these wide audience demographic profiles. And there are a lot of people who show up to our tables that might not get it or take it as seriously as we do or recognize all, similar to the movie Sinners. Everybody's down to have a party, but when the real stuff starts happening,
Facts.
They don't know how to handle it and don't even want to be involved. So why do you think it is that our music seems to be such an easy avenue for culture vultures?
Because 9 times out of 10, a lot of the times we're not the ones that are actually controlling what happens. I think when you don't have control and somebody is in a position of power and they like what you do and they can monetize it and they can distribute it and they can do a little things, maybe that person that is a quote unquote culture vulture is in that position. You know what I mean? Where maybe the person that's creating the art is not. And ultimately that comes down to power and how things are disseminated throughout the world, throughout the culture, amongst people.
Have you seen that happen specifically? Do you have any examples?
I feel like a lot of the music is that way over time. I think you can just pick a different point in any given moment and pick somebody or studio heads or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? To call one person out, I think might be a little disingenuous. But in terms of music-wise, I always felt like, like a Macklemore type of, you remember the year that he won over Kendrick Lamar for Grammy? That was a perfect example. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not really a representation of the culture. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, I feel like in more recent years, shows like the Grammys and things like that have been trying to be a little bit more accurate in terms of who should receive awards and who truly represents the culture. But there was a lot of years where that was not happening. You know what I mean? And people that weren't deserving of the flowers because they weren't really the ones representing the culture were getting them.
Yeah, similar to the Oscars and how they just implemented that rule that you've got to watch or listen to
you see
everything
what
in
I'm
the
saying?
category before you vote. Why wasn't that something that was already happening?
Exactly.
On the contrary, though, love my people down. I enjoy a good white tune myself here and there, but what would you have to say about the BET Awards, giving awards to white artists?
It's an interesting point, right? Because I do think some of these artists are genuine in the art that they create, but they are still guests in the culture. So should they be the ones receiving those awards at the BET Awards when it's the Black Entertainment Awards? You know what I mean? I get it. You know what I mean? There's probably somebody out there that's been working 10 times harder that didn't get that spotlight that probably should have been in the conversation.
And I feel like when Jack Harlow won, it was for a feature on Lil Nas X song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about, and I know this is not necessarily the question that you asked, but when you bring up a Justin Bieber or somebody like that, sometimes I feel like we're giving away position. Like, I feel like a lot of times when I listen to some of Justin Bieber's music, in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is kind of like traditional R&B music. You know what I mean? But why are some of our R&B artists not making these songs? Why are some of our R&B artists making songs where, you know, we see a lot of times the images, you want to look more like a rapper. And they kind of lean towards that lane, which leaves this lane open for somebody like a Justin Bieber.
So what things about our culture, about our art form, about hip hop, do you think they'll never be able to emulate or take away from us?
Experience. I think our most revered artists have litany of experience before they put it on an album or before they put it into music. You know what I mean? And if you haven't lived through those experiences, you can always listen to them and hear them, but you're not going to relate to them the same way. And I think experience and exposure and all of the things that build a person up to who they are before they make a record is the things that you could tell, like, nah, you ain't go through that. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's those things.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I feel like the answer to the question is, how do we determine who's real, who's verified, and who's not?
Right.
And I think I might be pushing the envelope as far as the conversation we're having today, regardless of race and where you come from. Experience and exposure are going to tell on you every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of that, I want to play a little bit of game.
Let's do it.
If that's cool.
Let's go. Let's
All right.
go.
So
we can sit up for this one.
Yeah, let's sit up for this one. So I'm calling the game the Black Club Bouncer.
Okay.
Yeah. So the both of us, we work in media, but just as public-facing figures in general, we're going to be the first introduction a lot of people have to Black culture, period, and what a very form that might be. So as Black Club Bouncers, I want to go through a few different scenarios, who we're letting in, what music we're playing, and you got to make some decisions.
Okay.
We ain't speaking for everybody. We just speaking for ourselves.
Okay.
All right, so we work in the door.
Yes.
We've got 3 white artists that have walked up to us who want entry. 3 white guests who have been accused of being culture vultures themselves.
Okay.
We've got Iggy Azalea, Miley Cyrus, and Justin Timberlake. Who are you letting in?
This is easy. Iggy, no. I think she's terrible as a rapper. She might be a good person, but she was terrible as an artist. Miley Cyrus, absolutely not. I don't know what you were doing. Remember she was twerking and stuff? That was terrible.
That was a bad time.
So I'm going to go Justin Timberlake, but he's going to have some stipulations.
Okay.
First and foremost, before you step inside this door, we still need that very loud public apology to Janet Jackson.
I know that's right.
And Timberland has to be with you.
Oh, okay. I don't know, man. I want to give Miley a little bit of a pass.
Nah, hell nah. Miley ain't coming in.
Of the 3, dang. Because here's where I am with it. Of the 3, I feel like based on experience and exposure, Justin Timberlake gets the in. But Justin Timberlake has done our community dirty. And I'm talking specifically about the Janet Jackson incident and leaving a Black woman hung out to dry. And for that, you don't get a bunch of forgiveness from me. But with Miley, I do feel like there's some nuance in terms of who she was to young Black girls when we were first introduced to her on Disney Channel as Hannah Montana. Hey, you know, everybody has those days. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody gets that way.
I understand how you feel about Justin. That's why I gave him those stipulations. You know what I mean? But maybe too the Timberland aspect of it all too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know Justin Timberlake did this thing with NSYNC, but him as a solo artist, a ton of his success comes off the back of Timberland. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I kind of feel like, you know, that's his sponsor, so to speak. Yeah.
No, I get you. I get you. All right, so now we're the DJ. We're inside the club. We're turning up the party. We've been requested to play one white song that we are certain is going to turn up the club 100%. What white song are you playing?
I've seen this a million times, so I don't even have to dig through my Rolodex of songs. But this happens, and I'm going to give you 2, depending on what era of music you want to go to. But over the course of the past 5-6 years or so, Party in the USA.
Oh.
Party in the USA.
I wouldn't have picked that one.
Every white, Black, Latino, everybody in the club is singing it at the top of their lungs. Party in the USA. Now, if you want to go back a little bit, the song that had that same effect would have been Smells Like Teen Spirit from Nirvana. That gets the people going.
One white song that's going to turn up any Black function for me is Square Biz by Tina Marie.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, see, now we going back.
Okay. So we've got 3 more guests at the door.
Yes.
These guests are Black.
Okay.
But have been accused of being too lax with the culture, a little irresponsible.
Yeah.
We've got Nelly, we've got Soulja Boy. Both of them performed for Donald Trump, I believe. Then we've got Kanye, who as well.
And we got to pick one to let in?
We got to pick one to let in.
So we should automatically send Kanye to the doctor's office.
Absolutely. I was going to say
at some point we got to close the door and say, bro, go get help.
Yes.
So he's not coming in. Soulja Boy is going to go off the deep end. He's going to do a rant on social media or something. So he's not getting in. And we're going to let Nelly in. I think Nelly, despite that situation, I think he's the one out of those three that you can sit down and say, bro, come on, what are we doing? We can have a legitimate conversation and say.
Can we though? Because I feel like he
from
had
those three?
But I'm saying he had every opportunity before accepting it to have that conversation. Come on, bro, what are you doing? And he did it anyway.
All right, so who are you going to let in then?
No, I'm not letting nobody in.
I thought you got to pick one.
I have to pick one?
Yeah, if I got to pick one, you got to pick one.
I'm going to pick one for a very unserious reason. It's going to have to be Soulja Boy for me.
Because you just want to do the dance.
I don't know what to tell you. There are several dances he gave me in 7th grade. I don't know. Thank you for playing the game. That was so much fun.
It's a good game, man. We should play it in real life sometime.
Y'all can join me back in the studio with my next guest when we get back from this break. So, I don't know about y'all, but when I wake up and put my feet to the floor, my Black expression starts as soon as I step into my closet and put on whatever it is I decide to wear that day. So, here to talk to me a little bit about Black expression in fashion is fashion designer, stylist, and influencer, Mr. Quentin Thrash. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you said you grew up in a small town in the Black South, and I see how that is apparent in the boots and the bell and the, what did you call this? What's this?
Bolo.
Bolo, that is
Bolo
what
top.
It's called. Yeah. See that and the whole like Black cowboyism is very trendy in fashion these days, as is Black dandyism, i.e. the Met, and I feel like we learned a lot about Black dandyism just through the whole rollout for that, but very much inspired by Sunday's Best, and I feel like I see that in your styling as well. So can you talk a little bit how you feel like your Black experience contribute to your specific expression through style?
I mean, initially, like I never even looked at it from that perspective, right? I was just more of doing things that felt natural and genuine to me, and I knew that I had a voice for the Black culture though. So just showing people, like especially showing like other kids who look like me and talk like me, that you can do things that you may not have had access to being exposed to, you know what I'm saying, at a young age. Because like that was kind of my whole thing, is like me being from the South, like I wasn't really exposed to a lot. So everything that I'm involved in today was like learned, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying, nobody in my family is an artist or creative or into fashion or style. So for me, it was all, you know what I'm saying, things that I genuinely was attracted to, and I took the, you know what I'm saying, the steps to be able to, you know what I'm saying, learn more about that type of stuff.
And when did it become something you know that was more intentional about?
I would say, well, truthfully, I was always just a stylish person, right?
Okay.
So even though I was still dressing like everybody else, I still had on the Jordans and the Jabos and the tall tees and throwback jerseys. It's like I still was doing all that at the same time. But it's like my attention to detail was always different from other people. And so that just kind of like transcended to I was always known for being stylish.
Okay.
But I feel like it was around maybe like high schools when I kind of like started separating myself from people.
Okay.
And what happened was I started realizing that like people like viewed me differently, and it was a little bit easier for me to like infiltrate certain rooms and things like that when I was dressed more presentable.
But you said something specific earlier that I want to get into. You said you didn't necessarily think about it actively as an avenue of Black expression or your experience influencing. It's just something that was natural to you, inherent to you. And I feel like that's essential to just how infectious Black style is in the culture at large. And so you're a designer, like you're a stylist. Can you talk to me about some of the ways you've seen Black culture influence the mass?
I mean, in many ways, man, like I can give you a very specific situation. So if you watch the All the Stars video, the Kendrick and SZA video for the first Black Panther, I'm actually in that video, right?
Oh.
And you can't miss me. I'm like standing behind Kendrick out on a yellow like jacket. And I remember the casting director, he called me personally because of the, I guess whatever the mood board for the video was. And he's like, yo, Thrash, I need you to be a part of this video, like it fits your aesthetic. And I was like, cool, no, I got you. So I came on set, and when I got there, they had, the whole video was African inspired, this was Black Panther, and they had these white women that were styling all the other people. And I remember walking over to the wardrobe area, and they were just kind of, and like I literally came to set already dressed. You know, so I had a cane with me and everything. Like that's just who I was. That's who I am. And I remember the ladies was like, "Oh my God, you look so great." She's like, stand right here, and then they had other people that they were trying to like emulate my look on, and they had me standing here while they're trying to like, oh, can you go get some socks like these? Can you run to the store? Can you do this? Yo, can you call the tailor over here? These pants will need to be a little bit shorter. Like they're trying to like literally replicate, you know what I'm saying, my look. And I'm like, it kind of was disturbing to me. It was like this whole Black Panther aesthetic video, but they had these white women trying to style it and couldn't conceptualize all of this stuff until they seen what it actually looked like in real life.
Because the experience is key.
Yeah, so that's something that it always kind of bothered me a little bit.
Okay.
Like, that kind of bothered me a little bit. So when Kendrick walked into the room, he had this pink suit with this like purple and pink floral shirt on, right?
Okay.
And I remember when he walked in the room, I was like, hold up, that looks kind of familiar. And so I authored a book previously, like right before that, this was years ago, but it was right before that video. And the cover of my book was me wearing basically that exact same outfit. And I was like, one, I know I was already a part of y'all's mood board because y'all called me for this. I didn't audition for this, y'all called me for this. And it's just interesting to see like how people, they see tastemakers and influencers and stuff, and then like saying they draw that inspiration, or sometimes they copy and paste.
We had a conversation earlier about gatekeeping. Do you feel like we should? Do you feel like it's okay?
No, I don't. Because I think that everything we're doing is helping pushing the culture forward. You know what I mean? So like that's what I was saying. Like for me, I've come to terms with like, yo, like I understand what my space is, and I understand that there are other people that this doesn't come as naturally to them. So in order to be able to get to where they're going, they need to look to people who are already, you know, in those spaces. And I've just come to terms with that's kind of a space that I take up.
Particularly celebrity stylists, I don't think we understand how much of a role they play in shaping the culture, because a lot of our icons do have their own sense of style, but a lot of them don't have the time or capacity to curate it in as much as they'd like to, and so they have to have the help of these stylists. So when you're dressing people, I'm pretty sure it's always based on the individual person, but are you focused on storytelling? Are there any elements that, even if not intentional, are unique to Black culture that you make sure to incorporate in your looks for your clients?
I feel like every individual client is such a personal thing, to where I'm more so trying to dial in on what is going to help elevate their personal style that they already have. The things that I'm going to bring to the table are more so like the education elements of things, right? So when I talk about someone like, speaking of Black dandyism, when I talk about someone like Julius the Beast, that's somebody that people have never heard that name before. Like I just, like I told, I was just in Charleston speaking at the African American Museum, and they had never heard of who Julius the Beast was. So Julius the Beast was the person who was credited to be the first Black dandy. You know what I mean? So like, it's a lot of information that I love to give clients, and that's what I appreciate about what I do for a living, is like, I'm not just selling you clothes just because I'm trying to make money. It's like, no, like by the time you finish this interaction with me, you're gonna know what you're wearing, you're gonna know why you're wearing it, you're gonna know why the functionality of these things exist. You know what I mean? So like, that's kind of part of what I like to give as a brand and as a designer. Okay,
so I always like to be educated, so give us an example of that. Can you walk us through one of your looks?
Yeah, of course. One that comes to mind is I have a client named Russell Thomas, and he is a Black opera singer. And I believe he's from Atlanta, to be honest with you. And he's a heavier set guy, but he dresses really well. He has good style. And when he came to me, I was like, yo, this is something I'm really interested in, because he was trying to push the boundaries of what opera singers were wearing. So for example, his outfit, I know he has this like gold, it's a gold like textured tuxedo jacket with like this two-tone black and white lapel. And for the pants, we did a flared bell-bottom pant, which is like I said, none of these things are stuff that you see opera singers wearing. And then for his shirt, he explained to me how whenever he sings, he always wears his shirt unbuttoned. And I was like, I still want to keep you all the way, you know what I'm saying, buttoned up. And he was like, well, I need my throat free because that's how I sing the best. So I was like, I got an idea. So there's a shirt called a pussy bow shirt, where it has a bow instead of an actual, an actual tie. Right. So I was like, we can do this, and now you have the freedom of tying it as loosely or as tightly as you would prefer to do it. And he was like, bro, that is the fix to everything that I've been dealing with, you know what I'm saying, in this industry with, you know what I'm saying, having to wear my shirt on, but never being able to wear ties or bow ties when I perform. I saw the problem for him moving forward. We've broken down walls and barriers with what types of things are being worn on stage as an opera singer, especially him being a black opera singer. And yeah, like that's like, those are the things that I get really excited about, is knowing that like I'm pushing culture forward by being able to do these things.
Okay. So now I want to take a look at some celebrities who, with their stylists, have crafted their own styles that are rooted in Black fashion traditions. But then I want to discuss how they make that style their own and push the limits of Black expression through fashion. So first, let's take a look at Tyler, the Creator. Now, he designed this look himself. What are your thoughts?
Well, to be honest with you, it is very reminiscent of a few designs that I've done.
Okay.
So if you watch, is it The Late Show with Stephen Colbert?
Okay.
John Batiste is wearing this, I'm not sure if it's still on there right now, but in the opening sequence of the show, John Batiste is wearing this green and blue pattern, like color block suit that I designed.
Okay.
Which is very similar to this, as well as the one that I did for Cedric the Entertainer is kind of the same aesthetic as well. But his is just more muted because he didn't want to wear bright colors, so it's black and gray.
Okay.
But I mean, so of course I'm into the vibes, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then yeah, he got the low top docks on, which I'm into. I be rocking low top docks with my suits as well sometimes.
Okay.
So I'm here for it.
What about the wig?
The wig ain't really me, you know what I'm saying?
But it's pushing boundaries, that's for sure.
It's pushing boundaries. Like I said, I don't knock it. Like there's definitely a lot of openness when it comes to style for me, to where I may appreciate certain styles, but it may just not be for me.
So now let's look at this look from Diana Ross, styled by Ugo Mosier. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's beautiful. It's dramatic, and Ugo is actually a close friend of mine.
Okay.
And it has his name all over it. You know what I mean? So I like it. Was that at the Met?
Yeah.
It was at the Met? Yeah, that looks amazing. Like I'm all for, you know what I'm saying, being extravagant as long as it's done tastefully, and I feel like that's exactly what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You said Ugo's a good friend of yours and has his name all over it. So what about it are his like signature?
I think he's just he's not afraid to go bold, and he knows how to style people to where he can push boundaries, and it still
Makes sense.
Yeah, it still makes sense for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's iconic, man. Especially him being a young black guy, being able to work with such a prolific,
Legend.
you know what I'm saying, legend like that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm super hyped for him. I didn't even know about it. I must have overlooked it, but yeah, I'm excited to see that.
And that makes sense what you said, because even though it's him, it's very much Diana as well.
Yep.
All right. So last but not least, we have TLC, styled here in 1996 by Julianne Mieres. What are our thoughts?
Once again, I like it. Like I said, I love people, you know what I'm saying, being creative. I love the iridescent pants. I feel like that's not something that you see very often. I like how the switch up of the aesthetic as they're, you know what I'm saying, getting a little older, they kind of separate themselves from, I remember they was wearing all the cross colors and the baggy overalls and stuff like that. I love to see, like, as they progressed, how their style, you know what I'm saying, kind of elevated as well. And of course, you know what I'm saying, kind of keeping everything kind of in sequence of them all kind of matching each other, but still having their own different aesthetics. So yeah, I'm here for that as well.
Yeah, I love that too. Well, before we go, what do you think about my vibes? What do you think my style inspiration is?
Man, you killing it.
Oh,
like,
thank
you know what's crazy is I've been looking at the details of everything. Like I see the buttons or the snaps. I see the covered placket. I'm not even sure, the leather is kind of like a,
Who knows?
like a sash type vibe.
Corset.
Yeah, the
half
shoes.
corset.
I've been looking at it. I can't stop looking at the shoes.
Oh, thank you.
You killing it, man.
I have to give my stylist your thanks.
Word. Yeah, she doing you right.
At least for the show, I think inspiration definitely comes from all 4 women of Living Single. Yeah. That was definitely one of my favorite 90s shows, but each one specifically, their styles greatly influenced my own. Max, Regine, Khadijah, and a touch of Sinclair. Just a touch of Sinclair sometimes. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'll get that.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming to sit and chat with me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I've learned so much. Somebody got to put that shit on, and I'm glad you're out here making sure that people are.
All right, thank you. I appreciate y'all for having me, man.
Absolutely. All right, y'all, don't go anywhere. There's still more to cover after this break. So far, we've placed a great emphasis on culture and how we protect it, and how we may exercise it through fashion and expression. But now, I want to discuss what it is that really unifies us all under this umbrella, which is race. As we just saw through our conversation with Quentin Thrash, Black looks different from person to person, but that Blackness itself is the through line that still connects us all. And as history would have it, it only takes one drop to be a part of it. So I've invited scholar, activist, culture worker, and author of One Drop, Shifting the Lens on Race, Dr. Yaba Blay, to educate us on the underlying element of Blackness that unifies us no matter how we express it or what it looks like for us. Check it out.
All it takes is one drop. We know that Black folks come in all shapes, all sizes, and all colors, even in our own families, and we've come to see this as some sort of testament, if you will, to the power of Blackness. That somehow something is transmitted genetically through our blood that connects us to one another. So in many ways, we've come to accept the one drop rule as just the way it is. But at the same time, we don't necessarily see all Black folks the same or even treat all Black people the same. Given the history of racial mixing and passing and colorism in this country, we treat some lighter-skinned Black folks as suspect, like they're only Black by default or by force, assuming that they really don't see themselves as a part of us. Not for real. In the history of the United States, a Black person has been defined as any person with any known Black African ancestry. It's been called the one Black ancestor rule, the traceable amount rule, and the rule of hypodescent, but it's known most popularly as the one drop rule. The one drop rule holds that any person with any trace of Black African blood, however small or visible, cannot be considered white. They must be considered Black. Now you should know that no other racial or ethnic group has their identity defined or counted according to the one drop rule. You should also know that the one drop rule is characteristically American. No other nation classifies racial identity, specifically Black identity, this way. In fact, the one drop rule doesn't even make sense outside of the US. In many places, for a person of African descent, any one drop of anything else is enough to consider that person something else. So how is it that the United States came to adopt such a specific, quantitative definition of Black identity? Well, during the period of colonial enslavement, European enslavers were at the top of the social hierarchy and enslaved Africans were at the bottom. And for the most part, a person's position on that social hierarchy was recognized by the way they looked. If you looked European or white, light skin, slim nose, thin lips, straight hair, you were white. If you looked African or Black, dark skin, broad nose, full lips, tightly coiled hair, you were Black. And if you were white, you were free, and if you were Black, you were enslaved. Simple. But this simple social order soon became complicated by miscegenation. That is, the mixing of the races. Now, when I say mixing of races, at that time, I'm talking about the rampant rape of enslaved African women and the children they were forced to carry in birth. Those children didn't look as white as their fathers, if we want to call them that, and they didn't look as Black as their mothers, so what were they? They were referred to as mulatto. From the beginning, race mixing was viewed negatively, as were mulattoes. I'm saying it now for historical accuracy, but you should know that mulatto is pejorative. Don't say it. So the lines between white and Black were getting blurred. What to do? Whites were already a statistical minority at the time. There were more enslaved Blacks than there were white enslavers, and they were afraid of losing their control. They needed to maintain a firm color line. The one drop rule became critical in the defense of the white race. So various state governments began instituting anti-miscegenation laws. Racial mixing became illegal. In 1662, the state of Virginia passed one such law, proclaiming that, listen to it, any sexual intercourse between a white and a Black was twice as evil. Racial mixing was seen as a threat to the survival of the white race. The one drop rule helped to maintain white purity. So when it came to classifying mixed race children, anti-miscegenation laws followed the common law applicable to farm animals. Mulattoes born to enslaved mothers were relegated to slave status. It ain't matter if your daddy was white. If your mama a slave, you a slave. And the more and more mixing, the more difficult it was to just look at a person and know whether they were free or enslaved. And this was a huge problem for the social order of things. And because nobody pulling out your family tree to figure out who was who and what was when, all of those exact quantifications ultimately came to be understood as one drop. Anyone with any black ancestry was black, and they were treated as black, and they were denied the privileges of whiteness. By 1925, almost every state had some form of a one-drop law on its books, and until 1967, it was illegal to marry outside of your race. 1967. For generations, the one-drop rule not only helped to maintain the so-called purity of the white race, it helped to maintain white power. Although the one-drop rule was ruled unconstitutional in the 1967 Loving versus Virginia case, it lives on. In many ways, the one-drop rule has become the core of black racial identity, particularly in the United States. It's created the black race and the black community as we know it today, and it's come to define not only the history of blackness in the United States, but the racial history of the United States.